The Power Moms Network, empowering moms to lift the world.
Welcome. I'm Riley Karsh.
I'm Tova Kopan.
We are thrilled to bring you the We Go Boldly podcast.
Let's talk big burning questions, life changes, and maybe a bit of personal business.
Let's be bold and brave together. Are you ready?
I am. Here comes the show.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to We Go Boldly, the podcast where we are thrilled to be a part of the Power Moms Network. At Power Moms Network, we are empowering moms and creating a community of mothers mentoring other moms to greatness. It is a super fun place to be. We hope you will join us there. Check it out online and join us whenever you can. That all being said, it is still season 11. We love this season and don't love it all at the same time. It is slightly challenging for us on a personal level, but that's what makes it a good season, I think. As you guys know, we're talking all about like the unbecoming of it all. And what do we mean when we say unbecoming? We really mean a whole slew of things like undoing trauma. Well, you can't undo trauma, but like moving through trauma, undoing like things you've been taught that aren't good for you, letting go, accepting, all those fun words that are, you know, fantastic to say and super hard to do, but allow us to live the life we want to be living at any given time. So that's the light, you know, explanation of season 11. Today is a wonderful day for us because it is interview day. So someone else is in the hot seat to talk about their struggles. So we're thrilled to have an interview happening today. And I'm going to turn it over to Tova. Oh, actually, I'm going to say hello to Tova. Hey, Tova. I haven't recorded in a while, so I forget how, apparently. But how are you today? What's happening?
I know. We're off our game. We recorded like many vacations months ago.
Yeah, it's been a
back,
while,
right? It's been a long time.
Yeah.
I think, right? We didn't record that. I'm so confused.
You know what is telling about how off our game we are is we can't even remember. Like maybe it was last week. Maybe it was a month
we
ago.
had plans on recording last week and the week before, and we were all sick.
Yeah,
right?
Everybody's been sick all summer, so it's been a mess.
Yeah, so I don't remember. I don't have any recollection the last time we recorded. Maybe we recorded last week. Maybe
Meanwhile, let's just be clear. After when you guys are listening to this episode, you know, like it's November. So, you know, this is very confusing for everyone involved.
I know this is one of those where I'm like, it's cold out. I should be wearing a sweater, but it's hot out. I don't know what's happening.
Yeah.
But yeah, I am so excited for today's guest. And part of the reason I'm excited for today's guest is because, today's guest is one of my most favorite people in the entire world. And I don't know if I've ever said that before, but in this case, it's not an exaggeration.
Yeah.
You know, this person is literally one of my most favorite people in the whole world. Before I introduce her as, you know, why she's here. She's, you know, the godmother of one of my children and was my maid of honor and just like one of the most important people in my life. And, you know, it's been weird that she hasn't been on before because there are so many times we could have invited her. And yet I think she hasn't been on before because we needed her for this episode. And so when we were looking at this season, and it's not a particularly guest heavy season, right. Which it makes sense for the season and also makes sense for as we prepare for next season, which is a super guest heavy season, which we're really excited about because honestly, this is a lot of work this season and a heavy lift on our part. So we're really excited for next season and inviting people to come and talk. We are really excited to have our guest with us. So so let me tell you a little bit about our guest. And I don't know if you even said what we're going to be talking about today. So
no, I'm all off.
We're all out of sorts.
Out of whack.
So we talked a little bit about this on last episode, but we are going to dive more into talking about this idea of limiting beliefs. And we're going to do it while talking with an executive skills and business coach. And that amazing executive skills and business coach is the amazing Annie McCarty. And Annie works with life and business coaches to create business systems using her effortlessly productive framework so they can enjoy life that they've been working so hard for and make a huge impact and become peaceful millionaires. And I will just, I know like we have this bio that Annie gave us to read, but I'm just going to interject things as I read her bio because I have watched Annie over the years evolve from someone who has I'm sure she's going to talk about this and she'll be like, why did you say this in the bio? And I don't care. Like, like who really bought into that whole concept of like hustle, hustle, hustle. And we work really, really, really hard. And that's how you do better. And then realize like, there has to be a better way. Like that's not what we can't do that. We just can't be just working all the time and not sleeping. And she and I both used to be up in the middle of the night, like working really hard and being like, aren't we the coolest? Because we are in the middle of the night working harder than everybody else. And then I think we realized like that's not actually something that's sustainable. So a little bit more about Annie. She launched her first business at the age of 23 and has been an entrepreneur ever since, owning a brick and mortar small business as well as a variety of thriving online businesses. She earned her Master Life Leadership and Performance Coach certification with the Push Coach Certification School, where she is currently a Master Coach instructor inside their certification programs. Annie also recently launched Coach OS, an all-in-one business marketing and automations platform for life coaches so they can set up business systems with ease and put their business on autopilot to run in the background while they focus on working with their clients. Annie also recently launched a podcast where she talks all about those things, and we will highlight that, make sure everyone knows where to find all of those things. But before we do, let's just say hello. So hello, Annie, welcome. How are you doing today?
Hi, I am super excited to be here. I am doing great. Thank you guys for having me on. Finally, I've been waiting for this day for so long.
It's funny because we talked about it like right at the beginning of starting the podcast. So I don't know. I don't know what happened, but it's great that you're on today. And this is honestly, I think, the perfect topic for you to come on the show and talk about with us. My cat is attacking me right now. I'm sorry, everybody. A little distracted. He's like lost his mind today. So I want to dive right in and ask all the questions, but when we were crafting questions for our interview subjects this season, we really wanted to start out with the conversation focusing on kind of the why of you, and then we'll move into your areas of expertise because we think they go together. So our first question is, if you had the power to undo something that you either learned or mistakenly believed or experienced, or something from your past that impacted you, what do you think that would be? And why would you want to undo is the wrong word. It's not undo. It's just like not have happen or not have believed or like had better skills to deal with.
Yeah, this is always such an interesting question. And I use a question similar to this in my performance coaching sessions where I'm like, if you could do the last 2 weeks differently, what would you do differently? And when I answer this, I'll have something pop into my mind, but then I remember that lesson or mistake that then turned into a lesson was so important for me to learn. And if I undo that or didn't have that happen, I wouldn't be where I am now. So this is always like such a like loaded question in a way, because I'm like, well, there are things about my childhood that I would probably not want to have happened, but that's what made me into like super strong person who can like push through and be that like pillar for my family and that support system. There are things in business where like Tova was saying, staying up till midnight or 1 a.m., working and hustling. And, yes, maybe I would change that. However, I also learned that that's what I don't want to do for the rest of my life. So I think that it's hard to like pick one thing. If I could keep the lesson, yeah, it probably would be like all those hours of hustle. And for me, that started like back in high school, maybe even middle school. Like I remember in high school being up till like 1 a.m. at my kitchen table, like doing homework, and my mom coming down, like, what are you doing? Go to bed. You get up in 4 hours. And I'm
Right.
like, but I just have to like write another paragraph for this essay. Like, I'm not done yet. Like, all that perfectionism that I struggled with for so long, it definitely taught me super important lessons though, about what I don't want to have in my life.
Yeah. Where do you think that perfectionism came from for you? I mean, I think Tova could probably already answer this question for you. So that's why I'm asking.
Probably. Yeah. I think that, I grew up in a family where academics was very highly recognized and rewarded, for better or for worse. Like there were definitely benefits from it, but I think that, and it wasn't, some of that pressure was pressure that I put on. I was like, oh, I get a lot of attention when I get straight A's. So some of it was my parents being like, oh, this is important to us, in the way that they were recognizing me. But I think I was the one, like when we're so young, our brain is still developing, right? So subconscious beliefs were implanted of like, if I want to be recognized and praised, this is what I do. I work really hard. I am perfect. I don't make mistakes. I also went to school in a school system that had gifted and talented program. And while I got an amazing, excellent education that I would never want to like give up, on the other hand, there was a lot of pressure to be the best. And a lot of work came along with those classes. So I think that's kind of the root of where that came from for me. And it was just, again, like a brain that was still developing, having to kind of relearn like, oh, wait, no, we are enough, like just who we are. We don't need to have that be our worth.
Yeah.
Um,
Go ahead,
no,
Tova.
go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think that's the part, and I was just listening to Brene Brown and talking about this, and I think that's the part that a lot of us as perfectionists, and I include myself in this category. I mean, recovering, right? Because
Yeah.
we do a lot of personal development, but
Yeah.
in this category, a lot of us don't associate that perfectionism with shame and self-worth, and we don't realize that the two are connected. And so I think it's super important to not talk about it as if it was like a lifelong mistake, right? But to talk about it as if it impacts us so deeply in so many areas, right? And like the root cause may not just be like, I grew up in a similar environment where I was praised for my perfection all the time in academics. And as a kid, you seek out that attention because you want the cookie and you want the gold star or whatever. And at the same time, that's teaching you what you just said, Annie, which is like, where is your worth? Like, where is your value? And that breeds a lot of shame when you can't meet that expectation or you don't want to. I mean, like it's just, I think it's super important to have those conversations, especially with sort of high level perfectionists, what meaning like people who are super high functioning, but like that perfectionism is also really damaging. It's damaging your relationships and your relationship with yourself. I don't have a question.
Yeah.
Tova, go ahead.
Like I was wondering, you talked about how it went back sort of to the subconscious root, when you started learning that, and how over the years you've made these decisions based on needing to hustle and work hard, and how that sort of to prove your worth, right? And it obviously, for the first part of your life, it was driven to prove your perfectionism and your which looked like straight A's, right? They were like very easy to see the perfect because it was straight A's. At what point do you feel like your decision making stopped being informed by that, assuming that it has? At what point do you feel like your decision making started not being informed by that sort of thinking?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely a process. It was not just a like flip the switch kind of thing. Again, when stuff's like so deeply ingrained in your thoughts and beliefs, it's going to take a fair amount of time. But I would say probably about 8 years ago or so, I think it really stemmed from a place of just total burnout where I was like, I can't keep going like this. And honestly, when I'm coming from that place of perfectionism, I don't really like myself.
Yeah.
Like I don't like who I am when I'm embodying this. And I think for me, creating a distinction in my mind, like being a high performer is very different than being a perfectionist. Like
Yep.
you were saying, Riley, like the perfectionism comes with shame and guilt and all this like heavy baggage. You can be a high performer where you are striving for that excellence without the shame and guilt and all of the other like really heavy negative things, beating yourself up, like judging yourself over and over and over again. So I think that was where like starting to make that distinction and being like, I can work really hard and I also don't have to work really hard all the time. Like I can take time for myself to chill out and do things that I want to do. Like, what is all of this hard work for if you're not taking time to actually enjoy why you're working so hard?
Yeah, absolutely. We need to take a quick break. So let's do that. And then when we come back, I want to sort of pivot into talking about like how you got to where you are now, like why the how and why of what you're doing at this point. So we'll take a quick break, everyone, and we will be right back. Well, hello there, ladies. Are you ready to elevate your life and connect with like-minded souls? Join us every week at the Go Boldly Together weekly Women's Circle, where strength meets sisterhood. Dive into empowering discussions, share your victories, and navigate challenges together. Our circle is a safe space for growth and inspiration. Experience the power of collective wisdom and unleash your full potential. Don't miss out on the transformative energy. Click the link in our show notes or visit us at goboldlyinitiative.com/Women's Weekly Group to learn more about our Go Boldly Circle today. Together, let's embrace the journey of personal development and let's celebrate that unstoppable force within each of us. Welcome back to the show, everyone. Before the break, I mentioned I wanted to sort of pivot into what you're doing now, but like let's bridge the gap. How did you make the decision to sort of, other than obviously like not the burnout, which is a real, like I think all three of us have been there. How did you make the decision to move into business skills, executive skills coaching, life coaching, that sort of that arena? What was the catalyst for that?
Yeah, I mean, it was something that I had been kind of dabbling with, very untrained for quite a while. And I think a lot of it started with my own, like diving into personal development myself of like, hey, like there's this element I don't like who I am when I'm here. So let's slowly start to figure out like, why am I doing that? What is triggering that from happening? Did a lot of healing for my past trauma and all kinds of stuff. Started to like dive more into like spirituality. I'm not religious, nothing against if you are religious, that's amazing too. Like we all have our own version of that. But for me, just like starting to explore that, because I was brought up in a household where that was very not present at all. So, and then realizing through that process, like I was helping people with that, and helping people from like a wellness standpoint to start. with like their health and fitness and nutrition. And then I was like, I really actually like working with people on the mindset stuff way more than this other stuff. So I also would see where I would be helping people, whether it was like with their wellness or with their business. And I would give them things to go do. And they would be like, yes, this is what I want to achieve my goals. I'm going to go do this. And they would come back to me and be like, yeah, I didn't do any of it. And I be like, well, let's go try this. And I was just like giving people things to do and realized there was something else in the way. There was something else holding them back. And like you said in the intro, like it's limiting beliefs, right? That's usually what is holding back. Where they came from, that's another story, but like there's some belief. And so that was when I decided to actually go get certified as a life coach, because I was like, I want to crack this. I want to be able to help people on a level that's not just being like, here is a list of things to go do, come back to me when you've done them, but actually helping people get unstuck. Like, what is it that's holding you back? And how can we work through that so you can start to move forward and take action?
When you first started, so this is kind of like I don't know, an interesting, I don't know how to describe this, but the concept of limiting beliefs, I feel like that is a word that the three of us are so used to using and throwing around because we have read all the books and we talk the talk a lot and we go to therapy and stuff. But when you first started hearing these things or learning these things, like how would you describe to somebody what a limiting belief is? Or when you were trying to have a conversation with somebody and you were trying to describe to somebody, I mean, we did just have a whole episode on it, but like when you were trying to figure it out yourself, like what were you, and maybe you were doing it on your own, like as you were sort of growing your own ideas of what this meant to yourself, what were you formulating in your head? Like now we're like, oh yeah, limiting belief. Yep, we know what you mean. But like, what does it mean to you exactly what it is?
Yeah, so I would say it's any kind of like negative thought that you have that's preventing you from getting what you want. Like I don't particularly love this characterization, but I've heard people describe it as like an inner mean girl. And I don't like that because I think that it is kind of dissociating, like, oh, those are thoughts that aren't coming from me. And I think it's important to realize, no, like those are coming from me and there's nothing wrong with that. But if that is holding you back from getting what you want or becoming the person that you want to be or achieving the things you want to achieve in life, then like, there's something there. So, and I think, that's a very like surface level though, because I think it's important to understand there are the beliefs that, or the thoughts that we're aware of. Like maybe you're sitting at your computer and you're super frustrated and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm just so stupid. Like, and you think that thought, like that's more of a conscious belief. But realizing too that that's running in the background with everything we do. And a lot of the time we're not even aware that those are there. So I guess that's probably the best way. Like those things that are going through your head that you don't even know that are going through your head.
What talk to us a little bit about like the clients that you see. Obviously we're not naming any names, but like the people that you've talked to, what do you think the most common sort of limiting beliefs are that people have? Because maybe that will help people identify, oh, wait, I have that thought a lot. And,
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that we all have these, our own flavor of limiting belief. So, some examples of, and these are more like higher level, and then they tend to all drill down into what I call like a core limiting belief. So kind of more like higher level would be like, I'm too old to make this business work. Like, I work with a lot of business owners, so that's most of who I'm coaching. Or like, I'm not pretty enough to like be successful on social media. I'll never have a video go viral because I'm not like fit and in my 20s anymore. Or, I am shy and don't like having conversations with people. Like, a lot of people think that's a fact, but that's actually a belief. It's a limiting belief that's holding you back. But most of the time, if you start drilling down deep enough with people, it comes back to, I'm not enough is a big one. That's my particular flavor of limiting belief. Like, when it comes down to the core, most of like the other limiting beliefs I have, like, eventually, if you ask enough questions, it comes back to I'm not enough. So that would be an example of like a core limiting belief. Or you might have one that's like, nobody will ever love me. That might be another like pretty deep-seated limiting belief. And more on the surface, that's going to look like, I'm scared to like send somebody a message because I don't want to face that rejection. Like, I don't want them to reject me. They're going to think I'm an idiot, like those kinds of things.
Yeah, I think it's super, super important for people to hear sort of what you're saying, which is limiting beliefs tend to sort of funnel down into like core trauma, right? Like, it may not be trauma in the traditional sense of like somebody did X, Y, and Z to me and it was a horrible event. It might be like, I come from a divorced family and I felt abandoned, and I internalized that abandonment and turned it into no one will ever love me, right? Like, people don't necessarily associate those sorts of events in their lives with these long-term, like, core limiting beliefs that you're talking about. And I think it's important to start making those connections and start understanding, because that's when you can actually sort of affect change, which is obviously what you're talking about.
Yeah.
When you talk to folks about these sorts of core limiting beliefs, what are like, I mean, I know it's individualized dealing with all these things, right? But like, what are some steps that you would suggest people take? Like, what if you met somebody tomorrow and they were like, they said something and you're like, "Ooh, that sounds like a limiting belief." What would be step one?
So, obviously, I'm a huge proponent of finding somebody to talk to who understands that and getting coaching, partially because, even as a coach who's certified, like, yes, I can sit down and I can take myself through a coaching session, and self-coaching is very powerful. But when it's somebody else asking you the questions, things come out that you are not even going to be aware of. Right? Like, our brain processes information and thoughts and things very differently if we're speaking it out loud versus like writing it or just thinking it to ourselves. So that's number one. But I know that not everybody is going to have the means or the desire or is at the place to work with somebody yet. So I would say literally just start like jotting things down of, this came through my head, or like, even I'm struggling with this. Why am I struggling with that? What am I making that mean about me? Starting to dive into that. And I think it's really important to also understand the correlation of how our subconscious works. So, like, a fact happens, something happens that we can all agree upon. Our brain is going to interpret that through our belief system, through these limiting beliefs and other things. And so we're going to have a thought about whatever that thing is that happened, which creates a feeling in our body, an emotion. And then that's actually what creates the actions. So that's why it's important to, if somebody, especially, it's called coaching the action line. If you're just like, do this, do that, you're not really understanding that like there's these beliefs happening that are preventing you from doing that. So we can kind of work backwards. So if you notice like, hey, I'm always like self-sabotaging or, not following through on what I wanted to do, or I should be getting work done and instead I'm cleaning my kitchen. Like, there's a belief somewhere in there about what it is about that work that you want to be doing that's holding you back. So just becoming aware of those specific triggers for yourself. And yeah, I would say just like jotting things down and asking yourself questions. It's not like you can go online and find questions. On my podcast, I do a lot of just like giving people questions like, hey, around this topic, like brainstorm on like, yeah, what are you making it mean about yourself that somebody like didn't respond to your message? That's a really good one to ask.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to highlight what you just said, and then you just came back to it, that whole like, what are you making it mean? Like, what are you turning something into, whether it's that negative feeling or, like you said, somebody doesn't respond to a message and suddenly you have turned it into nobody's going to respond to my messages. Nobody wants to buy my course. Nobody's going to invest in my company. This is a horrible idea. Like, what have you turned it into? I think that is that rather than it just means that like that person was busy, right? Or whatever the case might be.
Yeah.
Or it might mean that I need to go back and like change the way I ask the question in the message. Like I think so often when we put ourselves out there, I've been thinking about this recently is, we get so much spam in our emails, but the spam in our emails is still, some of it's truly spam and bots and whatever, but some of it's people who are hustling, who are trying to build a business. And we ignore so much of it. Right. And like, I'm ignoring it because I'm busy. I'm not ignoring it because I don't think they have a great business. I've not even looked at it. And yet when somebody ignores something that I've sent, it's because clearly they've looked at it and determined that I don't have a business that they're interested in. Like, I think that we do have the tendency to make something mean more than it does. And I think that that's really like something important. And I'm glad you highlighted it.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, just even asking, like I was working with a client recently where this came up, and I was like, what are all the reasons why somebody might not have sent you a message back? Like, let's think of all of them. Like, and she was like, oh yeah, like they're busy. She works with people with aging parents who they're caretaking for. And she's like, maybe there was an emergency with their mom. Maybe like their loved one is in the hospital. Maybe social media was just too draining that day and they didn't have the energy to even get on. Maybe they didn't even see my message. Maybe it fell out the bottom of and so we just went through and all like the limiting belief stuff is what I call head voice. But then we get into I call our heart voice. So all these reasons, because when we think about like, oh my gosh, like what if this woman is in the hospital with her mother who had an emergency? All of a sudden, like our heart comes out and we're like, well, obviously she shouldn't be responding to my message on Facebook or Instagram. That's insane. She should be present with her mom and focused on her family. So when that's an easier way for us to shift into that heart. And rather than, again, making it mean something about us, we're suddenly focused on the other people and what's happening in their lives.
Yeah, I think as humans, we tend toward the centering behavior, right? Like we're the center of the story all the time. Like we're the sun and everything else is just coming around us. And that's just not accurate. Like that's not how people are functioning in the world. Like I rarely, have time or energy to think about what's going on with every other human I'm interacting with on a daily basis. Certain people, sure, but like everyone, absolutely not. I don't have the time, mental space, fortitude, bandwidth, whatever you want to call it, to do that. And I think so many of us forget that when the role is reversed, right? We forget like they're not thinking about me, and that's okay. Like they shouldn't be thinking about me, whether there's an emergency or not. Like,
right.
I'm not the center of their world, and therefore like I'm not the priority, and that's okay. Like that's what it's supposed to be. But we forget that, and it's good to be reminded. And that's, I think so many limiting beliefs are like that. Like we forget that like these things are just, as you've said multiple times, and I want to highlight, these are just thoughts. Like they're not truths. Like they're thoughts. Facts are things like there's a sun in the sky, right? Not like whether you have an opinion about it. So why do you think, why do you think it's so hard to let go of limiting beliefs? Like, what do you see sort of in your business, but even in your own life? Like, what is it that gets in the way of us being able to either accept these things or let them go, or whatever we need to do to work through them?
Yeah, I mean, it takes work. Like it has to be a very, either a very intentional process. So our beliefs change in one of two ways. Either some kind of large event happens, can be a traumatic event, it can be a happy event, but like some kind of big event changes that can shift our beliefs very quickly, or it's that slow reprogramming of our subconscious beliefs. And that slow reprogramming means like you actually have to do the work to change that programming. And we can do that through affirmations. We can do that through working with a coach. We can do that through self-coaching. But like it takes time, and it takes also giving yourself a lot of grace that I'm not going to say an affirmation in the mirror and it's going to like suddenly fix everything. Like we have to do this over and over and over again until we truly believe that thing and have been able to let go of the other stuff. Obviously, like therapy is super important, especially if you are working with trauma or like any like mental health issues or struggles. I am a huge proponent of therapy as well, and it can go hand in hand with coaching. You can kind of do double duty there. So, yeah, I think that's part of what makes it so tricky, because I think we can feel like we're doing better and we have these other beliefs and we're on track, and then something happens and it pulls us right back into that. I think also understanding that we have these beliefs for a reason. They're not there to just be an asshole and mess up our life.
Right.
Like they are there to actually keep us safe. So we have learned that, like our brain has learned that when we get into this certain situation, if we think this belief, it's going to like stop us in our tracks or not have us go out of our comfort zone. We're going to stay where things feel safe. And we think we can't get hurt there, or it's a hurt we know. That other hurt is unknown, or it might not be hurt, but our brain doesn't know. It's just trying to protect us. So I think there's a lot of grace involved in this process of being gentle with ourselves and not putting too much pressure on ourselves to change overnight. And when those old beliefs do come back in, it's there for a reason. It actually is serving us. Maybe not in the way we want it to, but it is serving us.
Yeah, I just want to highlight that for all of our listeners, and that I think it's such a massive mindset shift. And we've sort of been talking about this all season of like acknowledging that your behaviors, your thoughts, your attitudes, all of these things are generally, as you say, Annie, they're because at some point in your life, it was protecting you. It may not be protecting you anymore, but it was. And so once you've learned that that's the safe place to be, right? Like whether it's your beliefs or your behaviors or whatever, once you've learned that, it's super hard to unlearn because it's scary and your brain is hardwired to keep you safe.
Well, even let's, go back to what we started as three. We are all eldest daughters. You are not the, you're the first daughter.
Yeah.
Riley's the eldest daughter. You're the eldest of three. I am the only daughter. So all sort of eldest daughters in our own way, who had perfectionist tendencies. Being perfectionists, being hard workers, getting good grades, checking all those boxes were safety responses. Like yes. A nice way of saying it is it was a way to get our gold stars, but they were also safety responses. And, that's a longer conversation. But I think it is important, like you said, to recognize, like to really to recognize those things. And we have over the summer, Riley, you and I have talked about when we have had a lot of big stress experiences, how easy we've wanted to kind of go back on some bad habits, not even just had the limiting beliefs come back in, but been like, I want my old coping skills are like, they want to be used. And I'm like bare knuckling it, trying not to go back to them, because they were there for a reason. Like, they got me through 30 years. And I'm thinking about these limiting beliefs, Annie. I'm not going to give out your age, but like 8 years, you've been working on this for 8 years, which means a lot more than 8 years you were listening to your limiting beliefs as the truth, and you were believing them. And so it takes a lot of, I would think, daily effort and daily work to make sure that as you are getting up every day and raising your kids and running your businesses and just living your life, that you are making sure that they are staying where they belong. So what do you personally do to kind of make sure that your limiting beliefs stay sort of where they belong?
Yeah. First, I just want to say real quick too, when we go to another level, like when we're getting out of our comfort zone and growing and maybe doing something new, launching a new business, growing our business, those limiting beliefs, no matter how much work you've done, they're going to resurface, right? Because we're trying to stay safe. So I think a lot of people say like new level, new devil. No, it's new level, old devil. Like those things are just going to come back. So when that happens, appreciating it, like I tend to like recognize it and be like, okay, I see you. And like, honestly, give thanks to it. Like, thank you. I appreciate what you're trying to do. Like, I see you. And I like, think of my like child me, like you were saying, like these were there for a reason. It was our coping mechanism or protecting us from something, and just like honestly giving it some appreciation for what it did do for us. Like it kept us safe. It kept us able to move forward in life. But then, yeah, I mean, in terms of like my kind of daily routine, so number one, if I notice that, like I said, I'm feeling stuck or an old belief is popping back up or a new belief is popping back up, like actually taking the time to pause and think about like, where is this coming from? Why is this popping in here? What's going on? Leaning into daily affirmations. And the way I say affirmations is it's not just like looking in the mirror and being like, I am beautiful, I am amazing, like all of those. If you say something your brain doesn't believe, it knows that, right? So I tend to structure mine. I use what's called a because affirmation. So because I want to do this, and then I have like the new belief that I want to instill, like the way that I need to think to become the person who will achieve that or do that or be that person. So, affirmations are huge for me. I do a lot of like meditating just to kind of quiet as well, and just like a lot of deep breathing techniques too, to get myself out of that fight or flight, right? Because that's where limiting beliefs are coming from, the part of our brain that is responsible for fight or flight most of the time. It's not that like that like part of our brain that is like a higher level thinker. It's that very primitive part. So when we can activate our parasympathetic nervous system by doing some breathing exercises or meditating or whatever that looks like for you, like get outside and take a walk. That's another one of mine, just getting some fresh air. getting up from whatever I am doing to disrupt that, because we don't want to get into a thought spiral where one belief, then like all of a sudden we're like down this spiral of a million other beliefs or thoughts. So, there are a lot of different things that I do, both in the moment when that limiting belief might pop into my head, or also, like I said, a lot of the time we don't know we're actually thinking that. So it's more of like when I see the behavior of like, oh man, like I don't like cleaning my house. So when I am like cleaning my house all over the place, I'm like, there is probably something going on here because I don't normally do this. What am I trying to avoid by cleaning my house like a crazy person? So, in that moment, interrupting it, but then also kind of that like daily maintenance of things that I know help me personally.
Yeah, I think that's amazing. All of that is stuff we've certainly talked about. And I want to highlight the way you do affirmations. I've not heard that. And I think that's a very clever and wise way to go about it. Creating that sort of, because I want to, it's sort of like the idea of like dress for the job you want, which is annoying, but it's the same concept of like, embody the thing that you want to be. And so you're right. Like affirmations have never worked well for me because it's very much I don't believe that. I'll say it, but I don't believe it.
Yes.
So I like that a lot. We do need to take another quick break. We'll do that. And when we come back, Annie, why don't you talk to us a little bit about like what's going on with you right now? Like, what are you working on? Share that with our listeners so that they kind of know, where you're at. So we'll be right back, everyone, after this break.
Hey, pod friends, it's us again. Looking for a place to collaborate, an opportunity to share your knowledge? Have you been working so hard on a podcast, book, course, product, or retreat? Do you have insights that could light up our podcast? Well, we want to hear from you. We would love to support you in all that you are and do. Join us at Go Boldly Initiative, where we celebrate diverse perspectives and share the wisdom of our incredible community. Whether you're an expert, a hobbyist, or simply love learning, we invite you to reach out with your ideas. Visit our website at goboldlyinitiative.com/podcast guests to pitch the show or shoot us an email at hello@goboldlyinitiative.com to talk all things collaboration, advertising, and affiliation opportunities. Become part of our growing family. Let's make learning an adventure together.
Okay, so welcome back to the show. Before the break, I was mentioning that we want to hear from you, Annie, about like what you're working on, like what you can do with people, what's going on. Tell us all the things.
Yeah. So as you heard in my bio, which Tova shared, so one of the big things that I am doing right now is I spend a lot of time teaching in our life coach certification and then master coach certification programs for people who want to learn to be a life coach. And a lot of the time, like, yes, we have tons of people who are going out and using it for a business, but we also have people who are going through the certifications just to understand how this all works and be able to coach themselves. So it can also be more of like a personal development program as well, which is pretty cool to see both of those. So that's one thing that I have been spending a lot of time and energy with. And I just love teaching in the Master Coach program as well. I also teach business automations because that tends to be people who want to do coaching, life coaching, performance coaching, business coaching as a profession, as their business. It took me part of all of this journey. It took me a really long time to recognize, I don't want to say realize, but like recognize that the tech side of things that comes super easily to me of like, let's set up this email automation. Let's set up this opt-in page that then has all these things that happen in the background and set up ads that run to that. Most people don't like, that's not their wheelhouse, and they don't like it. It's scary, like all these limiting beliefs right around it. So once I realized that, and that I love teaching people how to do that in their business, that was like a huge awakening for me of I have this skill. And I'm also, if I can say so myself, like I'm really good at teaching people who are kind of starting from zero or starting from this belief of like, I'm not a techie person. I can't learn this. I love working with people who are ready to maybe experiment with doing all of that. So, I do a lot of teaching around that. And that's where the software that I launched, we've kind of been in soft launch for about a year now, but we're like ready, like we are fully ready to go. So it just makes things so easy in business because everything you need is in one place. And just super, super proud of this, this project that we've been working on, and we've now like officially launched. And that's where my focus is going to be, for the most part, is building new things to share with everybody in the software, building already done for you funnels and automations, and just making things even easier and giving people a lot of like done for you things inside the software. And with that, obviously, comes like a teaching element as well.
Yeah.
Here's how we actually use this. So,
Right.
yes. Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. But then I also do work with one-on-one clients as well, particularly business owners. But I love diving in with people because often as we start to build these things or be like, okay, maybe I do need new systems, all these limiting beliefs come up, right? So working with people one-on-one, like one of my favorite client examples, she knew she needed to raise her prices, but there was something holding her back. And we dove way deep into limiting beliefs, money limiting beliefs in particular, and just realized she had the most amazing moment of realization of why she was scared to raise prices. And once we uncovered that and worked through that, she was like, oh, well, it's a no-brainer. Prices are going up tomorrow. Her business is booming. She's actually working with more people, not less people, like she was worried about raising the prices. So yeah, those are some of my favorite things, favorite clients to work with, is where we get to do all of it. Like I was building these business systems for her, but also working with her on like the actual coaching and limiting belief piece of it as well.
But yeah, that's amazing. I love success stories. They're like so hopeful and wonderful. I think it's great. Tova, you were going to say something.
Yeah, but I lost it as quickly as it came.
Oh no. Okay.
Yeah. I'm gonna blame COVID brain.
That's fair. Well, I have one final question, and then I want to get into our quick response questions for the season. When we close out an interview, we like to ask people to kind of share what their like favorite advice they've received or favorite like bit of knowledge that has been imparted on them in the past, and like what that is and why it's important to you. So maybe you could share that with us, Annie.
Ooh, that is a good one. So we're gonna stick with the limiting belief theme here. So one of the biggest realizations for me was a quote by one of my mentors and somebody I work with very closely, Josh Coates. He said, "Our limiting beliefs are constantly looking for a story to prove themselves." And once I realized that, if you have a limiting belief of I'm too old to make this business successful, you're going to go out and you don't know this is happening, but you're out there looking for all the reasons why you're too old and everybody else is younger. And I think just bringing that to the forefront, and that's another reason with the limiting beliefs, like why we hold on so tight, because we are actually out there looking for all this proof of why we're right. Our brain wants to be right about everything, wants to be right about our beliefs. And so recognizing that, like, hey, this isn't really like a right or wrong situation, but this is why I'm out there looking for all this proof of why these beliefs are true. that made things that much easier in my journey, like in this process that I've been going through to like the 8-year process here, made huge leaps. So I think that's really important to share with people around this conversation is yeah, you will actually go out and find all the reasons why your limiting beliefs are true and right, and find all the proof out there. So yeah.
Yeah. Brains are lying liar faces. They're so hard. Tova, do you want to do a quick response, or you want me to do it? How are we working this today?
Yeah, I can do it. That'd be fun.
Okay, go for
Okay,
it.
so we have 6 quick response questions this time.
Okay.
So I can't ask any follow-up questions. You don't need to be like one-word answers, but like short answers is what we're going for here. So first question, what is your favorite way to unwind after a long day?
Music, whether that's like singing. I am not very proficient in playing instruments, but I'm learning, and just I love getting on the piano and just playing and singing and turning music on and just jamming, rocking out. So yeah.
What's one thing on your bucket list that you haven't done yet?
Lots of trips. I love to travel. So I have some places that are pretty high up there, like Iceland is one of them, New Zealand. So I would say traveling to some of these places that I want to go so badly.
What's your go-to comfort food?
Ooh, that one's tough. All the things. Tacos.
If you could instantly master any skill, what would it be?
I'm going to say playing guitar. I'm going to go with the music theme.
Nice. What is a hobby you've always wanted to pick up but haven't yet?
That's a really tough question. Say mountain biking, something outdoorsy.
And describe yourself in 3 words.
Ooh, should I go to my core value words? Okay, we're going to go to my core value words. So honest, vibrant, and tenacious.
Oh, I love that word. I'm not supposed to follow up. It's one of my favorite words, though.
Like it.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show today, Annie. It is, well, one, it's fantastic to see you. It's been a while, but 2, it's just great to have this conversation, and I think share all this information with people out there. It's so important for us all to like work on our self-awareness and what's happening in our own worlds, and be able to create whatever life it is that we want for ourselves. So with that being said, where can people find you if they want to, reach out for any of the amazing things you're doing? There's a lot out there, but where's the best place for people to find you?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you guys for having me on. This was so much fun. And yes, it's been way too long since we sat down and had a chat. So
yes.
But yeah, you can probably the easiest place to find me is my website, avmcoaching.com. V is in Victor in the middle there, AVM. So that has links to like all the things I have going on. I'm also somewhat on Instagram, been kind of in and out of social media, but you can follow me over there at AVM Coaching. So yeah.
Fantastic. Well, we will put all that in the show notes so that people have it easily accessible. And like I said, it was great having you on the show. We really appreciate all your shared knowledge and energy and all of those things. It's been lovely. And yeah, thanks again. So we will be back next week, everyone, with another episode from season 11. Until then, everyone, have a wonderful, wonderful week.
Thanks so much for listening to We Go Boldly podcast. We know you're busy and we love spending time with you.
If you enjoyed this week's episode, let us know. Head to Apple Podcasts right now to rate and review our show. While you're there, be sure to click that subscribe button.
Want more us time? Follow us on all the socials at Go Boldly Together.
Want even more us time? As in all the coaching pizzazz. Find us at goboldlyinitiative.com for all the info.
We will be back with more excitement, research, and deep thoughts next week.
Until then, keep on being the bold, brave, amazing people we know you already are.
The Power Moms Network, empowering moms to lift the world.